Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast. My name is Melissa, and this is Sammy. We are diving deep into conversations that connect and inspire. Stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Stories that take us to the heart of human connection. Please note that opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast. Please listen with your kindness and an open mind. Each story shared is authentic and vulnerable. Let's embrace our differences with empathy, knowing every voice enriches us. Together, let's cultivate a community of respect and curiosity. Thank you for listening. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired.
Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast, everybody. Today we are here with Sarah Robertson-Barnes. Sarah runs, I'm sure she's got more than this going on, but how we found her was through Instagram, and her whole Instagram page is all about sustainability, and I love her little quote, "It's only single use if you use it once." I was thinking of her the other day when I had to take the wrapping off my eggs, which made me angry, and I used that to wrap my salad to cover it so that it all stayed fresh later, and I was like, it's only single use if you use it once. And she's from Ontario, Canada, and she's all about how to be sustainable in the suburbs. And we're really excited because, as you know, this is releasing in we're making it Earth Month for the month of April, but we just want to spread a lot more awareness around sustainability because I feel like it's really missed. And unless you are around somebody who's really strongly in that world, a lot of us don't think about these things, and it comes down to really small little things that we do every single day in our lives. And we just wanted Sarah to come on and help enlighten the people that follow our account and teach us a little bit more about sustainability. So welcome to the podcast, Sarah. We're happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm glad we were finally able to fit this in.
Yes, absolutely. I want to start on just a really simple question here. I want to start in kind of, how did this journey start for you? Were you raised this way? Did it come later in life? How did living a more sustainable life, how did that happen for you?
I was definitely not raised this way. So I am from the 1970s. So growing up in the 80s and 90s, we weren't really thinking about these things. I think we got recycling when I was a kid. But I've always been a bit of a tree hugger and a bleeding heart, as my dad would call me. But what really got me into climate action was my high school science teacher. So this was during the Kyoto Protocol days, so like 92, 93. And we are so far past that now, but she was a huge inspiration for me to the point where I became a high school science teacher. Just my love for all things nature and how things work in the ecosystems and that kind of thing. And then when we were trying to start a family, I was going through infertility and repeat pregnancy loss. And so I got really into researching, like what's in our personal care products and the impact that plastic could be having, which sort of sent me down a rabbit hole. And then when we finally had our first son is when I got into reusables and cloth diapering and all that sort of thing. So it's just sort of building up. And then I found the zero waste hashtag on Instagram in maybe 2017. And it just blew my mind because I realized there was more people like me who were really into trying to live plastic free and buying in bulk and not driving and all of these different things. And then I moved to the suburbs and, walking to the store was no longer an option. Walking anywhere is not really an option, that sort of thing. And so I really wanted to show folks that live in the suburbs, which many of us do, most of us do, that you can still do this work, even if you don't have access to like the aesthetic bulk store and eucalyptus leaves and all that kind of stuff. Like, it is in your daily life. It's very doable, even if all you have access to is like Costco and Walmart.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my origin story.
I really like that. And I can super relate to that because I feel like very similarly, like in elementary school, I remember when we were doing recycling, and that's when it kind of became a thing and being part of that team. And then that was where it stopped. There was no further education at any point in time on how to be better. It was just recycle. As long as you recycle, it's fine. Mm-hmm. There was nothing else, right? Mm-hmm. And like buying secondhand was what broke people do. And it's not instead of a sustainable option. And so it wasn't until like, same with you. I was always a tree hugger, like driving past developing neighborhoods, like always made my heart sink from the time I was a kid. And I still feel that way about it, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And so it wasn't until I kind of came on Instagram, which wasn't until 2020, that I was like, oh, there's so much more I can do. Like I had no idea because nobody talks about it anywhere else. So yeah, that's super relatable. So was it kind of like a slow step process then for you from that point on?
Yeah, I think it was just sort of number one, realizing what I was already doing. And I think that, I have folks say to me, like, oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. And then I get them talking and I'm like, well, you're already doing this and you're already doing this and you're already doing that. So that that was like really validating. Also that I'm like not weird, that other people are doing this too, and there is a movement behind it. But yeah, it was like connecting with all different kinds of folks in the climate action space and the sustainability space, and just seeing how other cultures do things, folks with different access do things, that it's like nothing new. That sort of thing was really, I mean, I am a white woman in the space. And so being exposed to all these different ideas and how systemic they are and all of that, like I learned something new every single day, and how climate action is really the bedrock of all these other societal issues that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. How I don't know how old your kids are now, but do you know how it started when they were kids, helping teach them these little bits you can do? Because it's a harder thing for kids to understand, like the global aspect of this all, right? Like what were some of the conversations that you had with your kids when they were younger about how to do better for the environment, how to impact the environment, how we can be more working with the world instead of against it?
So they're 13 and 12 now. So I am cringe, and whenever I talk about this kind of stuff, they're like, "Oh my God, Mom, we know." So nailed it. But because I started doing this like right when my first son was born, like cloth diapering and the clean canteen sippy cup and all that kind of stuff, that's always just sort of been their normal. We go to the bulk store, we go to the farm and pick up our CSA box, that sort of thing. And so I would talk to them about, I'll just use the farm as an example, that food doesn't come from the grocery store, that it comes from a seed. It has to grow from the earth. You have to take care of it. It needs water and sunlight and soil, and someone has to pick that, and it's hard work and all this sort of stuff, right? So also the way that we shop. So for example, the way that I got my husband into this was using Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace to buy secondhand first. So the kids just know now, Dad, can we look for this on Kijiji? Every brick of Lego in our house is secondhand. Our video game console, all of that kind of stuff. They know that we're just going to do that secondhand first. Can we look on eBay for this soccer jersey I must have, or whatever it is, rather than just, click Amazon and it'll be here tomorrow. Yeah. So it's just the way that we live in our home, like all parents. This is the scaffolding that we're laying down for them. We're a plant-based family, all that kind of stuff. This is just normal for us.
Yeah.
And, they also know that like, okay, well, other families do things differently. And that's also fine. All families do things differently, and all of those ways are valid. This is just how we do things. Yeah. And then hopefully when I send them out into the world, that's what they're taking out there with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a bit different where I'm not like suddenly switching things up on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that was the case, then we'd be sitting down and having a family meeting about it, because I need their buy-in. I can't just force it upon them. Whatever the thing is, you got to sit down and have the buy-in of your family and take it one step at a time.
I'd be curious to ask how, I don't know what this is like in your family, but I know what it's like in mine, and I won't go there, but we are very similar. All the things, I love my family, they're wonderful people, but we are the same. Everything comes off secondhand. We're going to look secondhand first, whether it's a secondhand store or Kijiji or Marketplace or whatever. It's secondhand first. If we can't find it and it's something we need, then we might go to a store. But if it's not a need, we're going to wait until we see it come available. But not everybody that gives gifts and presents in the family feels the same. So do you have conversations with your kids about that at all? Or is it just kind of like, that's just what it is and you move along?
Yeah, absolutely. This goes back to saying every family does things differently. So for example, at birthday parties, they'll bring home the little treat bag of like tap from the Dollarama. And I've never once told them not to take it. It's their decision. We're not going to do that at your party. But when you go out into the world, you make your own choices, and I want you to be empowered to make your own choice. So we do that. And then as far as gifts coming into the home, I think at this point, my friends and family are pretty hip to it. But it did take a while. So we've been doing they've been getting gift cards and that sort of thing. I know with the grandparents, one of the issues was, well, they won't have anything to unwrap. Because we've been asking oh, what about getting us a pass to the science center or to the zoo or what have you? And I was like, oh, they won't have anything to unwrap. But the last 2 years, the kids have gotten a box of Pop-Tarts with their Wonderland pass inside. So they paid for their amusement park pass for the summer. A+, recommend. And then every time we go, we're like, oh my gosh, isn't that so great that Grammy and Grandpa got this for you for Christmas? So it just, continues throughout the whole year and they're grateful for it. Yeah. So it does take a lot of conversations. It won't just be one conversation. What did it for my parents was my husband saying, we're just trying to keep clutter out of the house. Work like a charm. If I said that, it wouldn't. So you sort of have to do some Jedi mind tricks, figure out what the buy-in is going to be from the person you're talking to. And just say we'd love it if you just really took them skating or what have you, especially in this economy. I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more secondhand gifts, a lot more experience gifts, food gifts, that sort of thing. Yeah. So you can always get people to buy in when it's about money. Yeah, it's a real pain point for everybody. So if you can give alternatives that still are really cool, I think that you can see that shift happening.
Yeah. And even I know for us, it's the pointing out, if you get them an experience, don't just give it to me, you take them on that experience. And then it's you give the gift and then you get this gift of time to spend with them and go and experience with them. And so it's a double header, you get 2 gifts in one and time with your grandkids or your niece or nephew or whatever it may be. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Go, Melissa.
Well, I want to talk about something, and it's a little bit of a shift. Sam, you have your mug?
Oh, pivot, my friend's
your pivot mug.
My friend's pivot mug.
It's a little bit of a shift, but I want to talk about overwhelm. So I want to talk specifically to. This is for me too. I have felt like this. I don't think it's an uncommon way to feel, but the feeling of I personally, maybe I'll start with me personally because I can speak for myself. I can't speak for anybody else. I personally have felt this real pull to do something for the environment, to do my part, all of the things we're talking about. And then this overwhelm hits when I see something like the plastic that's waving up onto beaches and when you see the garbage patch in the ocean and this sinking feeling of well, how am I going to make a difference with that? My one shift into not using plastic straws, is that really going to make a difference there? Or it is even our country starting to ban single-use plastic, is that even going to make a difference when you start to feel this overwhelm of but the earth is so much bigger than me? How do you get over that? And what would you say to somebody who's feeling that kind of dread sense of overwhelm with that?
Sure. I still get overwhelmed with things like that when you see mountains of plastic or mountains of textiles and that sort of thing. But remember that each one of those was a purchase that somebody made and decided to discard. So every time you don't do that, you are not adding to the problem, even though you may not be solving it, which you can't. You're fine. You're an individual. You're not Exxon or whatever. Right? So making your individual choices does actually matter and not adding to the problem. The next step is sharing your individual choices in your sphere of influence. So your friends and family. Beyond that, if you have a platform, if you have a podcast, if you have a big Instagram account or whatever, sharing your individual actions in ways that seem doable to make other people start shifting their actions lessens the problem. And then, the final boss is getting people involved in the political aspects of climate action, whether that's just signing a petition or writing to your rep or going to your community town meeting, starting a community group, organizing a litter pickup at your school, whatever it is, there are different parts of the action that you can take with what you feel most comfortable with. So if it's your first day washing out a Ziploc bag, like, it's okay if you don't come to the climate march with me, but maybe you'll come next time.
Yeah.
Right? It's all sort of a gateway drug into climate action, which really is community action. So all of our individual actions do matter, because that does make the collective, and the collective is what shifts policy. Does policy need to be shifting faster? Yes. It needed to be shifting 20 years ago. But we can still mitigate the worst effects of what is happening if you start today. If you start right now, it's not too late. But if we do nothing, then nothing changes. So.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love that too. And I love what you were saying about how, like, not in the future, like, we're not going fast enough. Because I remember sitting on an airplane a couple of years ago, and I remember they had, like, their advertisement on the airplane, and it was saying, like, by 2050, we're going to be fully, like, emission free. And I'm like, that's so far away. Do it faster.
It used to be 2030. And they just keep shifting the goalposts, right? But so what you can do as an individual sitting there is like, okay, well, I'm going to endeavor to take one less flight this year somehow. Yeah. Maybe I'll take the train. Maybe I'll just call into that meeting or whatever it is. But again, you're not a billionaire on your private jet. Like, do what you got to do. Make the changes that you can make. And if it's something that you can't control, then, like, that's fine. Just forget it. Work on something else. It all matters. None of us can do everything, but all of us can do something.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. All of us can do something. Absolutely. I want to kind of ask more about that right there, that you were just saying, like, because, you know, and this is, again, speaking for me, like, travel has always been a really big thing for me. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized the impact that travel has on the world. But it's always been a really important thing for me. So it's like one of those things where, like, I value the earth and I value the planet, but I also value travel. And so how do you navigate those two things? And I know the ways that we've figured out doing that, but like, what would you say to somebody in that situation?
I think it really depends on, like, the kind of travel that you're doing. So if you are intentional about it, then you are like, I'm going to figure out my flights. I can do carbon offsets. I could take the train. I could do this. I can do ecotourism rather than just sitting on a resort using 18 plastic cups a day. Whatever it is, like, you're just going to plan your vacation around what's important to you. So we tend to plan places that we can hike so that we can see different landscapes and different ecosystems and that sort of thing. Or, like, what's a cool waterfall we can visit. So we tend to, like, do more eco-tourist kind of things. And then you can also, a friend of mine, when they went to Costa Rica, like, she taught a workshop at a school there as a way of sort of offsetting the emissions from the flight. She taught a zero waste menstruation workshop at a high school there, and brought some donated products with her, that kind of thing. So I'm not a sustainable travel person. There are lots of awesome people you could talk to about that, but that's sort of what I think about, is what do I value in terms of the earth? And then how can that be reflected in how it is that I'm traveling and how it is that I'm literally treading on the planet?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, like, for us, we carbon offset every time we go and we go and get our however many carbon, whatever it is, and we plant trees or donate to some sort of thing. And that's part of our travel fund. And I always think of it as, like, people are like, well, I can't afford to carbon offset after I travel. And it's like, well, if you can't, it goes back to when I was a server, and it was like, if you can't afford to tip, don't go out. Same thing. If you can't afford to carbon offset, don't do it. Like, it should be together. It should have been something that was taught together from the start. It just wasn't. I want to ask you, just in going on your Instagram recently, is you've been talking about the green belt going on out there on Ontario. And I want to ask, we're in Alberta, so we're a bit far removed from it, but I want to ask more about that. What's going on? Can you tell us what's going on about that? What you're doing in short form, what you're doing to make a difference, and what people can do to make a difference there.
Sure. So the Greenbelt is an area sort of around the top of Lake Ontario that is protected green space and also farmland. So farmland that hasn't been swallowed up by the suburban crawl of Toronto just yet. And it is a protected green space. And when our current premier, Doug Ford, was reelected, the last time, whenever that was, 2021, 22, he said, the people have spoken, we will not touch the green belt. and then proceeded to parcel off parts of the greenbelt to his developer friends. And everybody just sort of lost their minds. And so I work with environmental defense on communicating that to my audience and making sure that they know that contacting your reps about it and being loud about it does make a difference. And so that parceling off was halted. And now Ford is under RCMP investigation for corruption. Then again, we also have another provincial election next Thursday where he will likely be reelected. And I hope that by the time this comes out, he was not, because the Greenbelt is in danger. And I don't even like calling it development, it's destruction. Toast can never be bread again.
Yeah.
So once these spaces are gone, they're gone. And I don't know about you, but I enjoy clean water and breathing the air, and I want that for my children and for everyone's children. It doesn't need to be townhomes. Like, do we need affordable housing in Ontario? Yes. But swallowing up more green space is not the answer. It is a short-term solution to a long-term problem, and it will just enrich developers and not actually provide affordable housing for Ontarians, nor will it keep that green space intact. And that green space is critical, not just for obvious reasons, but the way that water drains into Lake Ontario will be disrupted. And Toronto has seen more flooding year over year over year. And so the more that we disrupt that draining through the Oak Ridges Moraine, the more we're going to see these, quote, climate disasters, these once in a lifetime events that seem to be happening multiple times a year now. So that, like, maintaining these wetlands and green spaces and even the farmland is critical to that type of climate resiliency as well.
Whoa. It's heartbreaking to me to think that people don't look at those green spaces the same way you or I do, that they see them as a development opportunity instead of like all of this wildlife or money or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just...
We need to start valuing the earth beyond money.
Yes.
And like, oh, this forest is just sitting here not providing any value. Well, what does the word value mean?
Yeah.
It means more than money.
Yeah.
Like, profit is literally killing us.
Yeah. There's so many options to redevelop places that have already been developed, that you can turn old malls or old buildings that actually aren't doing anything right now into affordable housing. You don't want to do it because it costs more than digging up the green space.
Yeah.
And so it really is for profit. It's not about the affordable housing. That's just their nice way of saying that this is the best option, you know?
So when you asked me earlier if it had been a natural progression from just sort of being a tree hugger to what I work on now, joining the community on Instagram and being educated by so many other folks in the space has really educated me on capitalism and profit over people and planet and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, and I'm so thankful for that because I understand now what the barriers are.
Yeah.
And what is our responsibility and what isn't, and what we can do about it. So, yeah.
So I'm going to ask you this straight up question. I don't know this. So this is genuinely, I have no idea. Who is the alternative to Rob Ford for a voting person in Ontario?
Yeah. So it's actually Doug Ford, his somehow
Doug Ford, sorry.
brother.
Okay.
Rob
What?
Ford was master mayor of Toronto. And then so Doug Ford is his brother. I don't know. So
Sorry.
At this point, I would say literally, yeah.
Did you say they're brothers running against each other in two different parties?
They're brothers. No, so Rob Ford was the mayor of Toronto, and who was just like ridiculous. It was a whole thing. But then he died, and then his brother became the leader of the Progressive Conservatives in Ontario, which is an oxymoron. But anyhow, so he's our current premier. I could say a lot about that, but anyhow, who is the better alternative? So, I mean, the left is going to vote split every single time. I mean, the Conservatives won like 18% of the total vote in Ontario last year, but or whenever the last election was, but because voter turnout was the lowest of all time, that translates into a majority government just based on our first past the post system. So right now, just for the future, because we're going to have a federal election coming soon, there's a website called smartvoting.ca, and that is where you can see which candidate is most likely to win in your riding for strategic voting purposes, just to keep conservatives out. Whether it's the federal election or the provincial election or whatever it is. Yeah. So I can see right now who is most likely to win in my riding, because I want to vote a certain way, but my riding is very 50-50. And so I kind of have to hold my nose and vote the way that is going to keep the conservative MPP from keeping her seat.
It is interesting.
It is what it is, but this is part of educating yourself on how our political system works and how you can actually affect change. And sometimes it may not get better, but you do have to prevent it from getting worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So keeping Ford out of the premier's office is keeping it from getting worse. And then we go from there. Sometimes that just has to be part of the process. It's not ideal, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's one thing my husband always says to me is like, when you're talking about the capitalism and like the profit over people and profit over the planet, and I'm like, I just can't believe how much people don't care about people and the planet. He's like, believe it. I don't know what to tell you. Believe it. And I'm just like, I just can't. Why are they so horrible?
That's okay. Part of my overwhelm is that whole like profit thing. And like, that's where I start getting like, oh man, like what is even going to shift that? Because you just like, people are greedy. People want money. It is like somehow treating the planet the way that we're talking about has to become profitable for them to sway in that direction, because they're not going to sway for anything else. It has to, somehow they have to make money out of it, or it's just not going to shift. It's sometimes how I feel. Like sometimes I get a little like, ugh.
A great segue into, again, taking individual action. So you're talking about feeling overwhelmed and like the state of the world right now, like the horrors, gestures broadly at everything. What we can control is what is in our immediate environment and what you are spending your money on. That's a huge impetus behind the Buy Canadian movement, for example, is to bolster our economic resilience amidst the rhetoric coming from our neighbors to the south. So what you are doing in your own kitchen really matters right now, just in terms of your own self-care and feeling overwhelmed at the state of the world, that you are still living your values within your own home. And that's going to fuel you into taking that beyond your front door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we forget the power of those voting dollars. Like in the way, whether it's you're voting for the company or you're voting for waste. I remember talking to someone one time and I said, like, we bought some plates secondhand, and they said, well, why didn't you just go buy them from the dollar store? And I was like, well, because that's telling the dollar store to make more plates. If I don't buy those plates from the dollar store is like, well, we made too many, so we'll make less next year. Mm-hmm. And so those dollars voting secondhand don't just matter because you're buying something that was already used. It matters because you're telling those stores to make less, which in the long run should eventually make a difference if everybody was doing things like that. But so the voting, whether it's buying Canadian or buying secondhand or buying, every dollar you spend is voting for the outcome you want, whether it's intended or not. Mm-hmm. It is that way. Yeah. Do you have so in talking about buying Canadian, how do you go about doing that? So like for us here, one of the things that we've been talking about in our household buying Canadian is making sure, like, as a small thing as all of our groceries are Canadian, but that's also really tricky when it comes to certain things. You've gotten in the habit of buying produce, right? Yeah. Fruits and vegetables, and those are not available at this part from Canadian farms at this time of year. And so unless you already have a garden where you've grown everything and frozen it all, you're either going without produce for half the year or you have to buy from somewhere else. How do you do that, navigate that in your household?
So with anything that we have to purchase or consume or whatever, I kind of use the phrase, what's the best worst option? Sometimes we have to order something from the bad place, like from Amazon, just because they're the only people that have this like weird part for our toilet that we need or whatever it is. But when you go to the grocery store, yeah, a lot of things are product of USA, especially out west where you are. I'm sure a lot of stuff is coming from California. It's also coming from Mexico. Mm-hmm. So sometimes buy Canadian means also buy from Mexico, buy from the EU. Like, yeah, emissions, but also the political situation. And again, where are you going to spend your money? Are you going to spend your money on a country that's threatening us or not? Yeah. That sort of thing. So what's the best worst option here? If I do have to buy the thing, like I remember when my kids were small, like the only fruit they would eat was strawberries. Okay. So do I just like let them get scurvy, or do I buy the strawberries from Mexico instead of the ones from California? Whatever it is. And sometimes you just have to choose the best, worst option and remember that the system isn't your fault. Try to work within it, like try to do subterfuge as best you can. But also look into planting a garden. Like we contain multitudes. We can do different things like that. So making an effort is always better than not caring.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I find that's a tricky thing over here is we can get our fruit and vegetables from Mexico and South Africa and Peru, or fruit from all those places, but all vegetables from over here are from the States. You cannot find, at least the ones that my household eats. Yeah. They're all, and it's just like, until I have a garden and I can freeze it all for next year, which I have the garden, it just hasn't grown yet. That's just what it has to be, right? Which is like a tricky
but it also speaks to like our interconnectedness as a global economy, that like we are connected to the folks that are out in the fields picking things, not being paid fairly, not being treated fairly, all of that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. So I don't mean everybody has to think about that all the time. I wish that were the case, but it is top of mind right now. We are thinking about these things. Where does our food come from? How does it get to us? That sort of thing, right? So this does have an opportunity to be an awakening in that way. Yeah. And just sort of understanding what our own resiliency could look like. Even if you are able to grow 10% of your own food, that is amazing. That's incredible. I love that. And that should be celebrated and encouraged.
I want to ask a full-on pivot question here. This is just one I'm really curious about because it's very prevalent in, like, we talk about health and wellness and fitness and all those kinds of things. And sometimes those things in the environment cross over in terms of like getting outside to be active, going hiking, eating your fruits and vegetables, those kinds of things. But sometimes in terms of our high protein intake, they really don't. And I'm just really curious your opinion on that specifically, like how, like I used to be a personal trainer. I've not eaten anything but chicken and fish meat wise since I was like 13, but obviously like beef and protein powder and all of those things are very pushed, and we think, well, it's just protein powder, but it actually still comes from cheese, which still comes from cows. So what is your opinion? I'm just really curious your opinion on that.
So I haven't eaten meat since 1998.
Okay.
Still alive, ran marathons, built babies, all that kind of stuff. But again, I really approach it from an eyes on your own plate situation. So I'm always going to encourage folks to try plant-based meals. I need to start doing this again, but I used to post like my winner plant-based dinner, just to show like, yeah, Meatless Monday is like awesome. If you just switch to Meatless Monday, awesome. You're doing something. That's incredible. Think about where your food is coming from. If you want to eat meat, like that's your thing. I don't think you have to be a vegan to be an environmentalist. I think that's like just rubbish. It's ableist. It's but if you're thinking about it, start to make a shift. And I'm fine. I get enough protein. I'm in perimenopause. It's like eating protein is my part-time job right now. And like beans are amazing and really cheap, and we grow them here in Ontario. That sort of thing, right? So it's just about, again, the small shifts. Switching to one meatless dinner a week actually does make a big impact. So just do that. Again, the theme of overwhelm keeps coming up, like, oh God, do I have to go vegan? No. No. just shift a couple of meals and you'll see that like, oh, I actually like this and I feel good and it's much cheaper and whatever. And then maybe that shifts the way that you meal plan or what have you. So
I love that.
yeah, I mean, for my personal choice, I don't eat meat for like all the reasons. And I've raised my family that way, but I have a kid going into high school. If the way that he rebels against me is going to McDonald's, like, okay, I've got 13 years of not doing that under my belt. And like, I feel really good about that. And, you know, again, I've provided the foundation, the scaffolding, but he's going to make his own choices. And I've always said that, like, well, when are you ever going to let your kids eat meat? Like, yeah, when they're old enough to choose, they can choose. So
I love how achievable your message is and how non-judgmental it is. Like, it is very encouraging to talk to you and to hear the way that you're speaking in such a non-judgmental way, in such a very achievable, tangible way that we don't have to take on the whole world. I just love that. Like, Sarah, I mean, I have been writing stuff down. I have a full page of ideas. I have a full page of, but yeah, I just love that. So thank you so much for being so encouraging and non-judgmental.
Thank you.
I love that.
I appreciate that so much. Like, if I could boil my message into one sentence, it would be like, all we have to do here is anything.
Ooh.
You do such an incredible job. Like Melissa said, there's no guilt, there's no shame, there's no you're doing horrible if you're doing this. It's just like, now you're aware, you've heard this message. Are you going to do something? Do you decide that you care, or do you not? And one thing is better than no things. And I feel like that's just a really common message from a lot of different sustainable, different Instagrams that I've seen, is like, changing one thing is better than not changing anything.
I want to ask, so this has just been on my mind lately, and it's another one of these things that can be kind of overwhelming, and I don't want to be doomsday, and I don't want to be overwhelming, but it is something on my mind, and I would love to hear both of your ladies' thoughts on this. There's lots of talk about this now, and I'm starting to learn more and more about it, and it's like blowing my mind, this whole idea of microplastics. And it's on my mind a whole bunch because I'm thinking about things like, okay, I'm reusing I have for my kids' lunches, for example, I have their containers and I have reusable bags. And then sometimes we use Ziploc bags and I wash them and reuse them. And then I start thinking, wait, these are built to be single use, unfortunately. Am I just releasing microplastics by continuing to wash these plastic products and using them over and over again? Am I perpetuating a problem by releasing microplastics into my kids' lunches and into our household and into the environment? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, this is on my mind a whole bunch. Like, how can we lessen our microplastic footprint, I guess, and how to not be overwhelmed by that?
Yeah, it is like literally on your mind. Recently, they said like a teaspoon of microplastics are in our brains. So that's cool. Again, it's one of those things where the consumer ends up being responsible for corporate malfeasance. So cut yourself some slack on that. Ziploc, if you're using like name brand Ziploc bags, if you notice on their boxes now, they encourage you to reuse them. So, I mean, they're shedding microplastics, like they just are. It just is. It's in our drinking water. Every time we wash our clothes, it's going down the drain. Is that your fault, or is that the fault of, fast fashion? It's fast fashion's fault. So again, it's opting out of those systems. And when you boycott, also remember to contact your reps about it. I'm pretty sure my MPP has me blocked at this point, from just being on her case about the green belt. Fine, like, go off, Dawn, but I'm not going to stop emailing your office. That sort of thing. So take the overwhelm about it. Like when you're standing there washing out your Ziploc bag and being like, oh God. So great. So you're aware of it and you're thinking about it. Send an email. You know, when you go hide in the bathroom from your kids for 5 minutes, take that 5 minutes and send an email, and just translate that overwhelm into action. Do what you can do in your own home, but there's only so much you can do, especially when you have small people living with you. Your brain is just mush and also full of microplastics. So take that overwhelm and turn it into action. And I don't know if we can solve the microplastics crisis, but it is a crisis. Make it a talking point with your MP.
Yeah.
I know you guys are in Alberta, so oil is king. But we're never going to get out of that until we get out of it. And the way that we get out of it is by shifting what the populace thinks of these issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, you washing out your Ziploc bags is not the issue. Okay.
I love it.
It's just,
I love that. Thank you.
I think it's one of those tricky ones. I mean, Ziploc bags. So like if they're in my house, it's because they got sent here. Like I don't buy the packaging. I reuse them, but like we don't buy them. But it's one of those things, like even as an example, like one of those health and wellness ones, which ties into exactly the thing is, so in so many cases, we're trying so hard to do better as humans, like trying to eliminate microplastics and trying to, whatever it is for us, and try to be better to take care of our human bodies. But some of the things we do are also actually worse for the environment. And so how, like, you know, I have this one about air filters in my head all the time. Is like people want air filters in their house because it cleans out the air and it cleans out all the things and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but the air filter itself is actually garbage we don't need in this planet. Like, it has filters that have to be changed. It's running on electricity. It's like it itself becomes garbage one day. Like, where is that line, you know, of like better for us, but better for the environment and like not crossing over?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just sitting here exhaling CO2, so I'm part of the problem. But again, it's what you have to do to take care of yourself so that you can go do work that is larger than that.
Yeah.
And I can't think of the name of the company right now, but they do make reusable air filters and furnace filters that are machine washable. We have all the solutions that we need. There are amazing scientists out there doing incredible work. There are amazing green tech companies out there that are doing amazing work. And they need that groundswell underneath them to make it as commonplace as all of the things that we use that are made from oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, like thinking of, sorry, this ties into that and what we were talking about earlier about gifts, is like when my brother was born, his gift from his godparents was a acre of the rainforest. And I'm like, why aren't we still doing gifts like that for kids? Like, why does it have to be all the newborn baby things? Like, I got shares in Disney, but like, why isn't it like, I'm not rich.
Yeah.
Really not. Deposited $6 Canadian the other day and we're killing it over here. But why, those were the gifts I got as a kid. Like, why aren't we doing more things? Why can't more kids have acres of the rainforest? Why does it have to be things? Like, it's just a weird thing that's been going on. But
it's part of like the overwhelm with sustainable living, I feel like, though, is that we're trying to act counter to decades of cultural messaging to just consume. Like, I was a teenage girl in the 1990s. I've been heavily targeted at for makeup, skincare, fast fashion, all of that kind of stuff. My entire life, just endless onslaught. And now with, you know, like social media, and it's endless. It's just constantly shooting into our brains. And so when we try to do anything counter to that, it feels bad. It feels overwhelming. It causes anxiety, even though we know it's the right thing to do. So I think that's part of it, is why don't we do gifts like that anymore? It's because we are just conditioned to buy stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you don't give a gift that's brand new, that's like a thing, all of that kind of stuff. So everything that you do to act counter to that, it's countercultural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah. I don't even have something to say back to you. I was just like, yes, absolutely. You are right.
Yes.
I have nothing to add. Absolutely. Thank you. I want to just ask, if you had one message that you could just, if nobody heard anything from this podcast today except for one thing, what would you like them to know?
Your actions matter. Whether it is making a choice to use something eco-friendly or making a choice to not buy something, that does matter. Every drop of rain makes the puddle, makes the flood. So both of those things really matter. Yes, you're one individual and you can only do so much, but you can do so much.
Oh, that was good.
Holy,
You
yes.
can only do so much, but you could do so much. Yeah. Oh, man. Thank you so much, Sarah. I would just keep you forever if I could.
Every month is Earth Month. Yeah.
So grateful for
Yeah.
your time. Gosh, I'm inspired right now.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. To help support the growth of this podcast, please feel free to leave us a review, follow us on socials, or recommend us to your friends. Your support honestly means the world to us. With love, Sammy and Melissa.